Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's track guide for the FIA F4. We are going to Oulton Park, but this time it's the international layout with both chicanes, making it a little bit different from last time when we ran it with no chicanes. That said, it's still a tight, technical, and fast track. Being smooth here is key. Avoiding touching the grass is key, but let's go ahead and take a look at the lap and then dive into the details. And before we go any further, I do just want to say thank you so much to everyone who likes, subscribes, comments on these videos. It's super helpful for me as I try to grow this channel. Also, if you watch me on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Pipa. Big thank you there for the support. And check out the description below because there's a link to my Twitch channel along with my Discord, an F4 racing league that I race in on Thursdays. If you want to join us, please come join us. We are always looking for people. A link to this telemetry for this lap on Garage 61. A bunch of great information down in the description below. So do just check that out. But let's go ahead and break down the lap. Let's go ahead and take a look at the track conditions. We have a 22 degrees Celsius track with 21-degree air temperature and low usage at 22%. In general, for this car, if these numbers are lower, it's easier to go faster. If these numbers are higher, it's harder to go faster. As for our laps, I did a full tank of fuel and then I did some messing around and then I tightened things up and I did these two 132s. We're going to go ahead and look at the fastest one of those, the 132.247. Let's go ahead and check that out now. Turn one is a fast and tricky right-hander where it can be very easy to get an off track on the exit, so we're looking for a late apex that allows us to get back on throttle at that apex to avoid the off track. We'll brake at the end of the boards on the left, and we'll trail off as we head into the corner, allowing the car to settle as we get to that apex curb. We'll go ahead and get back on throttle and run it all the way out using the concrete lattice that's beyond the red and white curb. The main thing here is keeping your right tires in contact roughly with the white line. I think kind of any more than I did here, and we probably would have gotten the off track. You can also see that I just missed the apex, but right as we get as close to the curb as I do on this lap, that's where you want to have two right tires on the red curb. I don't think it hurt us too much on this lap. Ideally, you'd put your right tires on the curb now. But we just barely missed that. That said, again, it doesn't really hurt us. The main thing here, though, is your exit. You're looking for a late apex so you can get back on throttle earlier, so you can get a nice, clean exit here. Exit speed is really a priority pretty much everywhere here at Oulton. We're going to talk about it like a theme. But again, this late apex helps us both with getting on throttle early and with avoiding that off track. So late apex is the key. Turn 2 is easily flat. We just want to keep the car to the right so we can set up for turn 3. Turn 3 is another fast corner, but we're heading downhill and to the left. There are also multiple drops as we head downhill, which is why turn 3 is called Cascades. That said, we're still focusing on the exit here for a good run. As we go over the first drop, we'll start braking, trailing off, and as we go over the second drop, we'll start accelerating, using that compression to help us with rotation, and using all of the available apex curbing that we possibly can. On exit, we need to be really, really careful because if we get our right tires over the white line and we stay over the white line until after the red and white curbing, so right around here, it's an off track. So that's why we're kind of leaving some margin there to avoid that off track. But once again, we're focused on the exit here. I think the main thing to consider is just staying smooth through this braking phase until you really get to that apex. So nice and smooth on the brakes. You don't really want to be hammering them or locking up tires. You want to allow the car to continue to roll through here with nice speed so you can get back on throttle at that apex. As long as you're patient on this entry, there's a lot of grip here for the exit. So using that compression right down here as we get into full throttle will pull you through this corner for a nice exit. Once the tires are up to temperature, turn 4 is easily flat out. The only thing you want to focus on is getting the car back to the left-hand side of the track to set up for the braking at turn 5. For turn 5, we want to get our braking done in a straight line and avoid lockup so we can get tucked into this camber early and use that camber to pull us through the corner and allow us to carry as much speed as possible while running the shortest line possible. We'll start braking at the end of the tires on the left, do our peak braking in a straight line. As we start to turn in, we'll trail off and we'll carry that trail for a while until we know we're set in there. Then we can really hammer back down on throttle. You can see that I actually shift from third down to second right before I get back on throttle. I felt like the punch out was a little bit better, and that extra shift down to second just made sure I got a little bit of extra rotation before I got back on throttle. But you can take this in third gear as well. That's just kind of a personal preference thing, in my opinion. Once again, the key is getting the car into the camber, which will allow you to run a short as possible distance while also carrying a lot of good speed. Missing this camber can easily mean you run wide on exit. Once again, though, we're going to brake at the end of the tires, keep that in a straight line, trail off into the corner, nice and tight, really be patient for the exit. Boom, when you see it, get back on throttle to power out for a nice exit as we run down to the chicane. Turn 6 is easily flat, you just want to keep it to the right-hand side to open up for the chicane. As we start turning in for the chicane, we'll start braking, and we want to use all of this first curbing to allow us to open up and get on throttle at the second apex. There aren't really a lot of great markers for the entry here, so I'm keeping my eyes in between those tires, and once that gap starts to open up, we want to start arcing into it and braking. Again, looking to keep our left tires just on the edge of the red and white curbing for that first apex. If you get a little bit closer to the tires, there's a dip there and it can really unsettle the car and make braking difficult. We want to keep that braking roughly in a straight line though. As we're entering the chicane, we want to avoid lockups. We really want to keep the car rolling nice and smoothly. So as we get through it, we can tuck in tight to this second apex and get back on throttle as we get there, which is going to set us up for a nice exit. Once again, the theme here at Oulton is really setting up for your exits. So smooth on the entry to the chicane and focus on getting on throttle at that second apex for a nice exit so you can get a nice run down this straight. For the second chicane, we're going to brake right at the 75-meter mark and get tight into both of these apexes, braking into the first one, a little bit of throttle in between the two apexes, lift, and then back on throttle as the car starts to rotate around that second set of tires. Opening up the corner in between these two tire stacks is important, so as you get past this first one, you want to keep those hands turned to the right just to open up a little bit, and then as you start going to the left, you can do that lift. That'll get you rotating and back on throttle. Also, for the second apex, you can try using second gear instead of third here. I did both. They run right around the same time. Once again, it's a personal preference thing, so really just up to you there. But once again, braking at the 75, looking to get nice and tight into these tires, keeping our hands rotated, lifting and turning into the second apex, and then getting back on throttle. Turn 12 after the chicane is actually pretty quick, and we don't need to brake for it. It's just a minor lift if we set up the car on the right line with the right trajectory. The first key to that is keeping our hands turned to the left as we exit the chicane. And then as we get to the crest of the hill, we want to lift off just a little bit. That'll send the nose of the car forward as we get to that crest, which will allow the car to rotate as we use a little bit of that elevation change there. Once again, then we don't need to lift off too much. We're maybe going down to like 60 or 70% throttle just as we get to the apex. And as we get to the apex, boom, back on throttle. So keeping our hands turned to the left as we get to the top of the hill, start turning to the right and lift off throttle. As we get to the apex, we can go back to full throttle and then we can use all of the curbing on exit. There is a little bit of like concrete lattice outside of the exit curbing, which is why you can get your left tires over this far. Any further and you might have some problems. Turns 13 and 14 are easily flat. The main thing here is coming out of turn 14, we want to stay to the left-hand side of the track to open up for 15. Turn 15 is a fast, double apexed right-hander where we want to be smooth on the entry to allow us to get on throttle relatively early so that we can get a nice run down this back straight. That said, we want to start braking just before we get to the change in color in the tarmac, turning in, touching that first apex. I like staying pretty tight as we get towards that second apex, just because it seems like the car doesn't understeer as much as if you try to run a little bit wider line here. But after we get to this first apex, we can start getting back on throttle as long as we're not understeering. If you're understeering from braking too hard or turning in too harshly or with too much speed, then you might have to kind of play around with the throttle or delay your throttle application here. But once again, we really want to focus on getting on that throttle as early as possible here because the exit is actually going to set us up for some great overtaking opportunities as we head into the braking zone of turn 16. So once again, tight into this first apex, nice and smooth before that and get on throttle there. Tight into the second apex and then run it all the way out to the curb, putting your left-hand tires on this curbing for a nice smooth exit. For turn 16, we have to be careful because there's a lot of undulation in the road, both as we're braking and then starting to turn in and applying throttle as we get to the apex and through it. So it can be really easy to lose the rear of the car here. We'll start braking as we approach the hut on the left-hand side, and then we'll start turning in and trailing off the brakes. We want to be careful with our trail off here because the undulation starts to go down as we turn in, which makes it very easy for that rear to snap loose if the weight of the car is too far on the nose from too much braking. On the flip side of that, as we get to the apex and start rising up again, we want to be careful with our throttle application because as the car gets light, the rears can easily lose traction and you can also spin or understeer out into the grass on exit. I promise you're going to see people doing that from the lowest split to the highest split. It's very possible you yourself or me myself might be spinning at some point here from not getting the inputs quite right. But we are really focused on the exit here because we can go easily flat out through turn 17 and set ourselves up for some good overtaking opportunities into turn 1. So this smoothness of braking as we get to the apex and the smoothness of application of throttle as we get through it and out to the exit is really important for our overtaking opportunities and for our race in general because overtaking can be quite difficult here at Oulton. So you really do want to take advantage by being smooth here and getting a nice, smooth, and quick exit out. Turn 17 is easily flat, so you can keep it tight as you run to the line. And one final thank you so much for watching, so much for the support. Again, if you haven't liked, commented, subscribed, and you want to do that, please consider doing it now. It's super helpful for me. Other than that, let's just go ahead and take a look at the lap again without me babbling over top. Really appreciate you. Good luck here at Oulton International with the Chicanes. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.